In our first lecture, we looked at how to navigate around the file system, how to work more efficiently by using autocomplete, that is using tab to complete the names of file names. You can also use for commands, and several other different commands and navigation functions that will make you more comfortable working with Linux. In this lecture, we're going to look at how to work with files and directories. So the first thing I want you to do is to pause the video and open up your VM and open up a terminal within your Mint 12, and then follow along with what I'm doing. Okay, so in the last lecture, we talked about how to navigate around Linux, and you should have practiced this a couple of hours. As I suggested, you should have paused the video when I indicated that you should pause it and duplicate my commands. And in general, try to make yourself more comfortable with Linux. And this is something that may occur to you occasionally, as we just saw popping up on the screen, is that there's a screensaver timeout. And we can just go ahead and type in our password, and that comes back up. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to clear the screen. Remember what that command is? We'll clear. There we go. And let's go ahead and let's run ls-al and see what we've done on here. Again, it's a long listing that shows all files, including the hidden directories and the hidden files. And so what we want to do is we want to start forging ahead, and let's go ahead and create our own directory. So I went ahead and I cleared the screen again. And what if we want to create a directory? By golly, I can't remember the name of the command. It's like, let's say you're in Windows and you know that there's a menu item somewhere, and you know how the menu items are all nested within menu items within menu items. And you have to kind of go in and try to guess as to where the menu item is. Well, it's the same kind of thing on Linux. It might be even worse, more difficult. However, there are some helpful hints that you can use and some helpful programs to help you find that command you're looking for, and one of those is called Apropos. A-P-R-O-P-O-S. And what that does is that looks in the help files and uses the keyword that you put after this to try to find the command that most closely fits what you're looking for. So let's type Apropos, and we want to make a directory, right? So let's Apropos directory, and let's hit enter. And let's just start at the top. Let's scroll up. And you should already know by what I did right there that there was something I could have added to that to make my life a little easier. So I'm going to go through this quickly. We can run down here and just kind of look through the files. I mean, these are actually the man pages that are being listed. But if we get down to here and we see there's one called mkdir, create a directory. Is that what we wanted to do? Yes, it is. And so we know that the mkdir is used to create a directory. Of course, what we could have done is just type clear, and let's go back up here, and we could have done what? We could have piped that to less to give us one screen at a time, right? And then we can click the space bar to go through and find what we needed page by page. Okay, let's go in. Now, I want to see what the manual page looks like for mkdir. So let's take a look at that. I just want you to get used to looking at the manual page. So notice this is very short, and there's one other switch or argument we're going to use in here in a second. Let's call the -p, the parents. We want to make parents directory as needed, but first let's just create a top level directory. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Okay, so where are we? We're in our home directory, right? Okay, I want to create a directory called My Classes. In fact, let's create two of them. They're both named My Classes, and this is just to reinforce a couple of points. mkdir, make directory, right? My Classes. Type ls. Does My Classes show up? It certainly does. Let's make another one called My Classes. Can I do that? Could I do that in Windows? dir my classes. Let's run ls again. There's one directory named my classes, and there's another one that uses capital letters. That's to reinforce the point that, once again, Linux is case sensitive. And so you can have multiple file names that have the same exact name. They're just capitalized a little differently. Why might you use that? Well, that's up to you, but I wanted to show you that capitalization does matter when you're working with Linux. Okay, so let's say under my classes, let's go to the top one, cd. If I just type, do I need to type my classes? No, don't do that. Type an M, tab, and we're there, right? Okay. So I also want to create a nested directory under here that goes something like this. Daytona State, summer 2012, summer. Let's do that. Okay, so we want to create that directory structure. I was just showing you what I want it to look like. So let's try to do that just by typing mkdir dsc in 2012 and then summer. And what do you think is going to happen? No such directory, because we're really trying to create summer right here, just summer. But none of these other directories exist. If they did, it would have gone on ahead and created summer. And I'll show you what I mean. But first, let's do it. Let's go ahead. I'll tell you what, and let's go ahead and we'll create mkdir dsc. Let's type ls. Okay, now we've got dsc, and now let's go there. Notice I typed D, capital D, and then tab, and then let's go ahead and let's create 2012. Let's see what the present working directory is. Okay, it's cd to 2012 there. Let's arrow up, and we're there. Now we can go ahead and create summer. Is it there? There we go. So notice that our prompt changed to my classes DSC 2012 summer. So we know that's good. Let's say now that instead of creating DSC, then 2012, then summer, we wanted to do it all in one fell swoop. So let's go back, and let's go back to my classes. Let me show you something, how to get there. What if we type this? Where does that take us from here? That's going to take us to the parent directory, right? 2012. Okay, what if we did this? / top. Oh, okay. So we've got parent directory, and then a / and then the parent directory of that. So that's taking us from here to here, to DSC, right? What if I wanted to go back to my classes? We could do that once again. Does that make sense? So the first ... takes us here, the second takes us here, and the third takes us here. Parent directory of the parent directory of the parent directory. See what happens. Hey, that worked. That was pretty easy, and that's very quick to type. Okay, in fact, let's go up one more, and let's go to cd my classes. And let's create the same structure as we saw up here, DSC 2012 summer. And so now you should be following along with me. You should have your MintVM open, and you should be doing the exact same things I'm doing. If you need to, pause the video after I run it so you can mimic what I'm doing. So mkdir, and remember the -p made the parents. So what that's saying is I want to make this summer, but if DSC and 2012 don't exist, go ahead and make those too. So DSC 2012 summer. You know, another interesting thing, unlike Windows, is, you know, Windows, when something completes, it'll say, hey, I did it successfully. Well, we expect, what, 95% of the things we do to be error-free, so it gets really annoying when every time something, every time a process runs, you get feedback saying, good boy, or good girl. Don't need it. The great thing about Linux and Unix is, hey, if you did it, and it works correctly, it's not going to give you any feedback. So let's see if that created these directories successfully. Well, there's DSC, so let's go down there. And there's 2012. There's CD there first. And then CD summer. Let's just don't check it and see if it worked. And it did. So that shows you a couple of ways to make directories. Now, say we wanted to delete, let's say we decided we only wanted to keep the lowercase my classes up here, and we wanted to delete all this stuff down here. How would we do that? Okay, if we go back to Apropos directory, and we scroll back up, and right there, remove directory. Delete a directory. That's what we want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it the slow way, and we're going to delete summer, then 2012, then DSC. Oh, in fact, before we do that, let's just say we want to go up and delete my classes. Let's see what happens. How do we get back up there? That goes to 2012, that goes to DSC, that goes to my classes, and then we probably have to go one more all the way back up to our home directory. Now, is that one way to get back up to the home directory? 2012, DSC, my classes, home directory. What would have been easier there? Right? And that would take us to my classes? The home directory? Yes. So let's switch back there. And that was something that I showed you how to do, or I alluded how to do in the last video. So it just flips back and forth between the directories. You can also try this. CD. That's something that was added by later versions of Linux. It's just type CD, and that takes you home. If you want to flip back, you can flip back there. I'm just using the arrow keys. Okay, so we want to delete all this stuff. All this. So rmdir, let's just see if this works. My classes. Let's do that, because we think DSC 2012 and summer are under my classes, so if you deleted that, that would delete all this other stuff, right? Let's see if that works. What do you think? Oh, it's not empty. Okay, so it looks like that we're going to have to go down and remove summer, then 2012, then DSC, then my classes. Let's go to the main page for rmdir and see if we can find something that will help us to do that all in one fell swoop. Well, this is entering once again. Here's this -p or -- parent. So remove the directory and its ancestors. For example, rmdir-p. ABC is similar to doing. This is similar to if C was summer and B was 2012 and A was DSC. We could use it in 3 different commands, or we could do it in one simple command like this. And so let's type Q for quit. And let's run rmdir-p, type my classes, DSC, and 2012, and summer. And let's see if it deletes all of them. No error message. And it's gone. So you see what we're working with here is as you're learning, you have to know where to look for information to help you out, whether it's your reference textbook or the videos or even online. But what I want you to do is get you used to using the man pages, and Apropos, because those will always be there. This is something that almost every student runs into, and they always they say, well, geez, you know, the man pages are hard to read, and I don't understand them, so I just Google for it. And what's funny is I've had the same students come back afterward and say, well, geez, I didn't have an internet connection, and I couldn't get out there to the internet to find the command I needed. And then thank goodness that I could look in the man page and figure it out. Some other students have told me, well, you know what, if I don't know a command, I'm going to ask the guy next to me. And I'm thinking, well, what guy next to you? Because more than likely, one of your first jobs, you will be the tech person. You're not going to have a whole litany of people sitting beside you that know Linux. More than likely, you're going to be the expert. So if you know how to go out and find the information, if you have no other source, if you don't have textbooks around, if you don't have access to the internet, all the information you need is right there in your Linux system. Okay, so we saw how to make directories and create directories. So let's look at a couple of ways that we can use to create files now. Okay, so let's go to My Classes. Now, I'm in My Classes if I hit the Enter key, but what if I just wanted to autocomplete all the way down? This is kind of interesting, and I hope, why don't you go ahead and make sure that you're doing this with me. Let's see what happens. What if I just hit Tab right here? What happens? Because I've already hit Tab once and I got My Classes. Watch this. First I have to be over here. Focus. That auto-completed. Did you see that? I'm not typing anything but the Tab key. You know why? Because there's no other choices within these directories except for what we have here in this directory structure. Isn't that cool? So I completed this with 2 keys, 3 keys, 4 keys, 5 keys. I typed M and then Tab, 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 Tab. Hit Enter, and you're there. Okay. Why don't you try that? Pause the video and try that. Okay, let's try a couple of different ways to not only create a file, but view a file. And we've already touched on one, which was less. And I'll show you an easy one, and this is good for your homework exercises, because essentially what it does is it creates an empty file that is a file with the name you want, but with nothing else in it. So you can very quickly create a file with the appropriate name that you can delete if you need to or manipulate without getting into a text editor. And that program is called Touch. If you type Touch 1.txt, what is that going to do? That's going to create a file, a text file called 1.txt with nothing in it. Let's type ls-al, and we see there's the file, and it has 0 bytes in it. And now what if we wanted to view this file? What if we wanted to view the contents? Well, you know what? First, let's put some text in it. And that, in fact, before you put some text in it, go ahead and create a 2.txt and a 3.txt and a 4.txt and a 5.txt. How would we do that? Well, Touch 2.txt, 3.txt, 4.txt, 5.txt. If I hit Enter, what are we going to have? Arrow up to ls-al. There they are. So on a homework exercise, let's say I give you that and I say, what would you, how would you list all the text files that end in .txt in a particular directory? You could do ls star.txt. Now notice I've kind of thrown this in here, the star, the asterisk, and it works exactly the same as in Windows. And that's just a wildcard that says, give me everything. So give me everything, disregarding the first part of the name, but that ends in .txt. Hit Enter, there they are. And so I kind of assumed you're familiar with the wildcard command. Maybe you're not, but go ahead and try that. Create some more files. And in fact, what if you put, let's say ls, and you want to list every file that begins with F and ends in .text. F, and then what would you put? So I don't care what's after the F as long as the file begins with F and it ends in .text. Star .text. 5 and 4. Now I want you to do the same thing, only the files that begin with T. So pause the video here and you do that. It should be obvious how you do that. Okay, so we want to put some text in this one.text. So we're going to be using a program. It's a text editor. It works, it comes with every version of Linux that I can think of. It's called Nano. It's not one I use. I use a different program. But this is the one that's for beginners, and it works extremely well. So you type Nano, which is like the name of the program, and one.text, and this is the interface. Notice it says it's the GNU Nano, so it was created by the GNU Foundation. The file is one.text. Here's where we do all our typing. And notice down here, these are the commands that you can use to help you in working with a file. So notice the important ones are, let me see, the caret sign right here in the bottom left hand, X stands for exit, so you can get out by hitting Control. That caret is Control X. Let's go ahead and do that. That's how they exited. Hit the up arrow. I hope you're following along with me. Pause the video if you need to. Write out, and this is kind of silly. The caret O for write out. The caret O, Control O. That's the same thing as save. Whoops. Save. You can read in a file if one exists. That is, bring it into the editor. You can use Control Y and Control V for previous page and next page. Control K for cut text. And uncut text would be Control U, and that would just be paste. So let's add some text in here. You can add whatever you want. Just type in quickly. You can pause the video at any time. Okay? And so we've got some text in our text editor. And now what we want to do, let's save it, right? So what's save? Save is write out and Control O. File name to write, one.text. Yep, looks good to me. Hit enter. Notice that there's different formats you can use. It's typically in Linux, you just hit enter. Notice that it wrote 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, and then there's a line feed right here because that's where the caret is at the end. So it's actually 4 lines. If I'd stopped up here after college, it would have been 3 lines. Well, let's go out and let's exit, which is Control what? X, right? Now let's arrow back up to ls-al. Notice now it has 65 characters in one.text. So what are some ways that we can read this text? Well, we can always bring it into Nano. Let's do that quickly. Nano, let's just type Nano and see what happens. Okay, we don't have anything. But here's read file. That means bring a file in to the program. So let's do Control R. File to insert one.text. And there it is. And so now we can append to it. And notice also you can move the arrow keys up and down in here. You need to do that. I don't know our, let's see, what's our zip code here? I'll use this one, 3214 there. Okay, we want to write out, Control O, name of file to write. I'm just going to hit enter and see what happens. It canceled it. And so it wants that name. So name of file to write, one.text. In fact, let's call this 1-1.txt. Let's see what happens. So now we're actually creating another file because we don't have that 1-1.txt. Wrote 4 lines. Let's do Control X to exit. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, so we do have that 1-1.txt that is now 70 characters. Still remained unchanged is the 1.txt. Voila, you've learned how to create a file in Linux. Yeah, that wasn't that hard, was it? Okay, so if we don't want to bring it up in Nano, because all we want to do is quickly look at the file, there are several ways in which to do this, and I showed you one way, and one of which is with use of less, and I told you that looks at one page of material at a time. So less 1.txt, and you get to see what's in the file 1.txt. Notice that says that's the end of the file, right? How do we get out of here? Q. Okay, let's look at 1 dash. Notice I typed 1 dash and then tab, and then there's that file. Okay, now make sure you pause the video now and make sure you try that yourself. Okay, I know you paused the video. I believe in you. I trust you. Okay, so now we've got one way of looking at it. Another way to look at it, less is just as good as a way to look at it than any other way. But there's also a file called cat, which is concatenate to the screen. And cat 1.txt, notice that that's just going to show you what's in the file. And let's say if it's 300 pages, then that file 1.txt is just going to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and won't stop. It will just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But here it's only 3 lines, so it's just going to show you what's in there. So concatenate. Okay, so make sure you do that right now. Pause the video. Okay. All right, let's do, let's go in here. Let me prove that to you. Let's go back into 1.txt with nano. Nano 1.txt. And let's copy some of these lines in here. And okay, so I just went in and I'm going to scroll down and notice that the control K cuts the text. Okay, then to uncut it's to paste it, and I'm just going to paste and paste and paste this stuff to show you. Okay, so several hundred different lines. It's a silly example, but it shows you how to work. Okay, so if I want to go to the previous page, notice that capital Y, Control Y, and we can scroll back up, keep scrolling until we get to the top. Let's save this file, write out, file name 1.txt, sure, 266 lines, and now let's get out of this, exit, and now let's type 1.txt. Notice this is doing it page by page. I'm just hitting this, the scroll bar. There we're at the end. Now if we do cat, it's just going to be whomp. There it is. Okay, so that's a couple of ways that you can look through a file, look at the contents of a file. Okay, finally, how do you remove a file? How do you remove these guys? Okay, if there's an rmdir for remove directory, what do you think there is for removing the file? rm. We sure? Well, we're guessing. Let's look at the man page. Man, rm. Remove files or directories. Ah, cool. You can remove both. We know we can use rmdir to remove a directory, but we can also use rm to remove directories. So let's scroll down here. And notice some important things right here. Force, which we won't use right now, but notice it says never prompts. You should use this very carefully because you might end up removing a file that you actually need. -I prompt before every removal, and that's one we'll show in just a second. And then you see the rest of them down here you can use on your own. You can try these out, but right now I'll hit Q to get out. And what we'll do is we will, let's say we want to delete every file that doesn't begin with 1. So we're going to use rm and -I for prompt, and then let's just go ahead and we'll do star.text. And so the star matches anything, so it's going to match 5, 4, 1, -1, 1, 3, and 2. You hit enter, and this asks us remove regular empty file. Notice that it says empty here, and it's a nice little intelligent thing to say, hey, you know, maybe you do want to delete this file because it has 0 bytes in it. We can type a Y or an N, Y for yes, N for no, yes. Remove regular empty file for.text, yes. Remove regular file. Notice it doesn't say empty now because it's not. We don't want to delete that one, so we type N. We don't want to delete 1. We do want to delete 3, and we do want to delete 2. Let's scroll back up, and there we go. So that shows you how to interactively remove files. Now, if you've got hundreds of files, that would take quite a bit of time to delete those in that manner. But for a small number of files, it works quite well. So that ends this lecture where we looked at how to create files, how to use the nano editor, how to make directories, how to remove directories, and in general how to navigate through the directories using the tab key. So I suggest that if you haven't already gone ahead and paused the video and run these examples, that you do that, and then you just practice on your own.